Today, we're diving into a story that honestly feels like it's from another century, but it is happening right now, in our time. It all centers on this one shocking choice made by a death row inmate, a choice that has brought back one of America's most visceral and most debated forms of execution. And really, the whole story hinges on this one single idea. It's a decision most of us can't even begin to imagine, but for one man, it was his final act. So what were the options? Lethal injection, the electric chair, and the one that just feels so out of place in the modern world, the firing squad. That word, bullet, it just immediately hits you with the raw reality of the whole situation. The man at the center of all this, a death row inmate in South Carolina, was facing his execution date in 2025. He was given a choice of how he would die, and he chose the firing squad. And that just brings up two huge questions. Why did he choose it, and how is that even an option today? Right. How did we get here? To really understand how a 21st century state brought back what feels like a 19th century method of execution, we have to go back. We have to look at the crimes that put this man on death row in the first place. And to do that, we have to rewind about 2 decades to a small house in rural South Carolina to see where this long, dark journey all began. So it's October 2004. The body of a man named Willard Tietjen is discovered. He'd been tortured and shot, but the horror didn't stop there. The investigation quickly linked the suspect to the murders of 2 other men. And by 2005, the court made its decision. The killer was sentenced to death. This wasn't just a crime, though. It was a taunt. The killer actually wrote these words on the wall, in his victim's own blood. It was this chilling message that gives you a glimpse into his mindset at the time, a direct challenge to the very system that would eventually condemn him. Now, when he was caught, the man confessed. He didn't deny what he did. Instead, he painted this picture of a life just spiraling completely out of control, fueled by what he said were years of trauma, abuse, and addiction. He even claimed she'd begged for help that never came, and that in the end, something inside him just broke. But here's the thing. Getting a death sentence in 2005 didn't mean it was gonna happen right away. And this brings us to the systemic reasons why this inmate spent so many years on death row and what forced the state of South Carolina to bring back these older, almost forgotten methods of execution. 13 years. For over a decade, South Carolina's death row was completely silent. And the main problem the state was facing was that its supply of lethal injection drugs had just vanished. Pharmaceutical companies refused to provide them for executions, which made it literally impossible to carry out the sentences. So what did the state do? Well, in 2024, the legislature took a pretty dramatic step. They reauthorized old methods just to get the system moving again. The new rule was, if lethal injection isn't available, inmates would now have to choose between the electric chair and, for the first time in over a century, the firing squad. As you can imagine, the return of the firing squad immediately kicked off this fierce debate, and it's one that really cuts to the heart of the death penalty itself. Is this just a practical solution to a supply chain problem, or is it a barbaric step back into a more violent past? On one side, you have state officials. They're arguing that the firing squad is quick, it's precise, it's a constitutional method, basically a necessary option to carry out lawful sentences. But on the other side, you have critics and even eyewitnesses who describe it as nothing short of barbaric, a violent spectacle with inhumane results that really belongs in the past. And those claims of inhumanity, they're not just theoretical. The source material points to witnesses from another recent firing squad execution who tell a horrifying story. They say the inmate didn't die instantly. He gasped, groaned, and it took almost 70 seconds for him to die because, they claim, the executioners missed his heart. So when prison officials were confronted with this account, their reported reply was this chillingly clinical line. It just reveals this detached, almost mechanical view of the whole process, where the definition of humane is measured in inches, and success is just, well, hitting the target. All of this brings us back to the inmate in South Carolina. With the debate raging and the system back online, his date was set. And what was waiting for him was this cold, calculated protocol. The procedure is a ritual of precision. The inmate is strapped to a chair. A hood is placed over his head. Then, a small target is taped directly over his heart. 3 riflemen fire at the exact same time, but only one rifle has a live round. That's so no one knows for sure who fired the fatal shot. And finally, a doctor steps in to check for a pulse. And that is the stark reality. After 21 years on death row, the countdown that began with blood on a wall was set to end with his heart in the crosshairs of 3 rifles. A choice was made, and a date was set. You know, the firing squad might feel like a relic, like a ghost from some bygone era of justice. But its return is this powerful reminder. These old forms of punishment, they're never truly gone. They're just waiting to be reloaded. So as this story comes to a close, we're left with this final provocative question. If you go beyond the legal arguments, beyond one man's guilt or his chosen end, what does this say about us? What do we really gain by learning to shoot a man strapped to a chair?